we need to create a vendor before we can create a contract with said vendor. So that's where we're going to get started. I will go ahead and share my screen now. Please bear with me as you will see, my email and all that stuff, and you'll see me navigate through. What happens when I share my screen is then a bunch of control panels for GoToMeeting pop up, and they kind of block me. So do bear with me if I take a second to navigate my own screen. So you're seeing the system dashboard for the Arizona Local Public Agency. It's called UTRAX, the LPA DBE system. The left-hand menu is our friend here. You'll know right away if your profile is like locked down or something, because almost nothing will show up over here. The first thing I wanted to do is show you what we did when we searched for the vendor that we were hoping to enter a contracting opportunity in. So you'll see that it pre-populated with some of the things that I've already been looking for. I started with Allegra because that's the easiest way to pull up that name. It's got a it's called like Allegra Print and Marketing. So let's go ahead and up here and hit search. This is the weirdest thing for me. I enter a search parameters here, but I have to hit search up here. Your instinct would to be hit this button, but I don't even, I have yet to need to hit this button. I don't know why I need to look up commodity codes. So keep that in mind. The search button for some reason is way up here. You'll see a big list of all things Allegra. None of these are for Prescott. And so that's where the problem comes in. This is where Lindsay and I need to enter in a new vendor. So the way I'm going to do that is use my left-hand menu, and I'm going to go to create, and I'm going to go to new vendor. Ideally, we would love it if the vendor entered this information themselves, but you can imagine them when you go and say, hey, we want you to spend all this time entering your information into this weird portal so that I can report my payments to the ADOT. They probably don't care at all, but they might be kind enough to help you get the information you need so that you can enter in this information. You'll notice here, the biggest point of worry for a lot of us was this federal tax ID or social security number. Can you imagine asking that from somebody and then just handing it over? This does not have the asterisk. We get to ignore it. This is mostly needed when it comes to a full DBE. If Allegra Printing and Marketing in Prescott wanted to pursue becoming a DBE, which would benefit them in a lot of different ways, they would come in and enter it here. But we're going to do it for them. So I will ask for Lindsay Bell's help. Can you give me the full business name? I know it's not just Allegra. Did I lose Lindsay? I do have this in an email from her, so let me pull that up. All right, so we prepared for this ahead of time. Allegra Marketing, Print and Mail. None of the rest of this information is required. So we're going to go down to main company email. I also got that from Lindsay Bell. And it's this files at allegraprescott.com. Sometimes each franchise owner has his own email address, but this is the one that they asked us to use, so we will. And their phone number.
It is Allegra Marketing, Print and Mail.
Hey, Lindsay, you're breaking up.
Thanks, Lindsay. You might have to use the chat feature. But I'm also using your email right now to gather some of this information. So thank you for helping me out. Sometimes when you have your camera turned on at the same time, it drains your ability to join. So let me just make myself a note here. All right, so we've got their phone number and now we need an address. So that just, a dialog box just popped up for me and it asked if I want to let the LPA DBE portal know my location. I can see that might come to a problem if you're at home and you're geolocating yourself. I think you should probably manually enter their address. And Lindsay was kind enough to provide that as well. 101 1026 Spire. And that's helpful. It popped up some help for me, so it just pre-populated all that information. Mm-hmm. Lindsay, if you can hear me in the chat, were you able to get Chris's last name, the company owner, the franchise owner? We'll see if she pops in. If I don't find his last name, we're just going to simply put Allegra, and this can be edited after the fact. His email.
The chat feature is in the top right corner. It looks like a little balloon. If there's any questions by the group, you can also use that chat function.
And so just to remind you where we are so far, we haven't started entering a contract. I'm simply starting to enter a vendor. I get an option to copy from above Chris's email address, and that's what I'll do. And it also copied his email, phone number, so that's helpful. Time zone, US, Arizona. Helpful if you're using a franchise, if it's headquartered somewhere else. We'll probably want to keep the local time zone for the local branch. So it looks like we need to hit review. I'm just going to scroll up to make sure that I don't miss anything, just because that's kind of how I roll. And it seems to be just that simple to enter a vendor. Let's hit review and see what happens. Okay, so it partially matches. That makes sense because as you see, as I showed you when I did a search of all vendors called Allegra, there were a lot of vendors called Allegra. So this is a warning saying that there's one that partially matches vendors that are already in the system. That's probably a good thing if you're entering a vendor and that vendor already exists, so that you don't enter it twice, because then the memory in the system and the server starts to get overwhelmed. So that's a good warning. Let's see what else we need to do. Okay, let me just check if I got anything in the chat. Okay, so we'll leave Chris's name as it is for Chris Allegra. That is very likely not his name. If it is, then it's amazing. But we can edit that after the fact. Let's go ahead and hit save so that I can show everybody how to use this information to create a contract. Just for fun, I'm going to copy that for myself, the vendor number, and put it in my little notepad. Maybe one day I'll need it down the line without having to go back and look for it. So, okay, so we've got a vendor in the system. For fun, I guess I can view the vendor account. This looks just like we thought it would, with the address the way we put it in, and the phone number and contact information, basically. So you can see here that you can make an edit and save changes this way. So once we find out what Chris's last name is, we'll fix it. So for now, let's focus. I'm actually going to hit home, and we can navigate from the home screen. Now we're going to use that information to enter a contract. what I did to help me get prepared is I always have with me the using LPA DBE system. This is our friend, and it's what even us at ADOT have to go through when we guide you through this on the phone. We usually have this in front of us because it's not second nature for us yet, as it probably won't be for most people. So let's, so
and
that's
Lindsay,
just what I have to
the link to that document, I think that was hyperlinked in the presentation last month. Is that correct, that the link to that help guide was in last month's presentation?
Yes, that is correct. It's also on our webpage, handbooks, awards, and templates is, I think, the tab on our webpage, and it's all the way down at the bottom. If anybody has lost their link and just needs me to send it to them, or if we need to put it in the chat, that's fine too. What I like about it is that this is kind of silly, but the table of contents is hyperlinked. I don't know why that just gives me so much joy, but it does. So there you go. I've also printed out a PDF of the contract that Lindsay had already successfully created. We do need to go in and edit it. When we tried to edit it, that's when we realized that there was an issue with her permissions in the system. I think there might still be an issue because you'll see that the buyer project manager information, we'll get there when we go through the contract, but that's Central Yavapai Transit Foundation, as it should be. But I noticed when I go up here, the contract information for some reason has Yavapai Regional Transit. And I don't know if that's because maybe somebody who is in the help desk got confused with just the word Yavapai, but I do think that will still create some issues for Lindsay when she tries to view this contract. So I had just reached back out to the BECO office to help once again to change this to Central Yavapai Transit Foundation. Although, Ron, you might want to take this credit and just move on with your life, right? So that's just what I printed out to help me as I go through this to set up a new contract. So let's do that together. As I said, the left-hand side is your friend. If you come over here to create and there's just no options for you, then there's an issue with your profile. Please reach out to us so that we can help. Don't agonize yourself trying to search for something that's not there. I want to stop here to make sure that there wasn't a question that I just missed. All right, so we'll go to create and we're going to go new contract. And bear with me because these control panels are such a pain. And I know you can't see it, but it blocks me from being able to do my work. Okay, so contract title. When Lindsay entered her contract title for territorial transit, she used a title called Update of Transportation Providers Directory. Contract title for printing, let's see, I hope I can interact with Lindsay, but let's see if we can come up with a good contract title. Printing, and I don't know if you use it for mail, but maybe we could just call it printing services. If that's not specific enough for Lindsay, of course this can be edited, and we'll go through that after the fact together. But if you've got full permissions for your agency and we've got the departments set correctly and not for Yavapai Regional Transit when it should be Central Yavapai, then you can always edit your contracts. So I hope Lindsay doesn't mind that I do that. This is also, contract number is also special to you. It's not something that, well, if you had a formal signed contract, you very likely would have a contract number to enter there. But I'm going to mirror what Lindsay's preference is. So see how she used CYTF 1920, and she called this one 001. I'm going to use that same method, and I'm going to call it 002.
Just as a confirmation there, Lindsay, I feel like this is very, this reminds me a lot of submitting RTAP reimbursements, and that I feel like that's an issue a lot of people had, was figuring out what the contract number or the invoice number would be. But that is that's something that would be identified by the vendor of a coding system. It looks like she used the date, but that would be not something we're waiting for ADOT to have. That's something that the individual agency creates on their own.
Yeah, and since it's printing services in this case, there's very unlikely to be a formal contract. So Lindsay made this title contract number for her own self, for her own coding. And of course, she can change this if it's not working. I believe she can change this. This might be a change that has to go in overnight in the system because it's an identifier, but it's still editable. But yes, thank you, Todd. This would be a number that you and your vendor work out together. If a vendor doesn't have a contract number because you don't have a formal contract, this is a perfect way to do it. Now, contract value, that's for the duration of the contract. We are doing a contract for the 2 years that you've got your funding from us. So Lindsay Bell had entered dates from her last contract perfectly, starting 10/1 of 19. And then I am being blocked by my little control panel here, but I think you guys can see the date that I cannot see. 9/30/2020, so that's a 1-year contract. So it looks like that's how Lindsay's done the first contract. I think you can do a full 2 year if you're working with this agency for that full 2 years of your award. I'm going to mirror it the way Lindsay did it. In this case, we'll do it for a year. Contract value then in that case would be the full value of that contract, probably projected for that full year. Contract value, I'm going to take a stab at it. And of course we can edit this. Contract holder owner, this can stay as Arizona Local Public Agency. But I think it probably is better if we change it to Central Yavapai Transit Foundation. It's a default, but it can be edited. And your agency is technically the contract holder owner. Now here's where I'd like you to take a note. The department is where I believe we've gotten things messed up with Lindsay Bell's account. And there could be something where perhaps the customer service reps that are behind this make decisions based on some incorrect information. So if you feel like your department got changed in that you no longer have access to what you thought you had, this is what I'll first check, is that the departments match. Maybe you got switched by one of the customer service reps for some reason. So, but do choose your department, your agency as the department, so that you have full access to what you need. Just like before, we're going to do 10/1/2019, and we're going to do the same date for notice to proceed. Notice that there's no asterisk, so I wonder if that doesn't pre-populate. I'm going to leave it blank and see if it does. And of course, my control panel is in my way. There we go. Projected end date. Now, it's either one or the other. It's either a duration or you project the end date. I'm going to mirror what Lindsay had done. I'm not sure if there's a perfect right answer here. I think if you use duration and do 1 year or use 2 years, I think that's okay as well. Maybe reach out on a case-by-case basis if you're worried about that. Now let me move my control panel back over. All right, so your prime contractor, this is another thing that's so different from what this system was designed for. The prime in this case will be the vendor, Allegra Printing. If there was a situation where perhaps there was like a, I don't know, a boutique printing service where they actually contracted out with Allegra, maybe there was a door-to-door printing service or something, then you would start worrying about primes and subcontractors. I don't know how many of you will have prime and subcontractors, but for most of us, we will be calling our vendor the prime contractor. So let's go ahead and click the link that says Get Vendor. Just so that you know, if I were to start this process today by just starting the contract and not starting the way I did by adding the new vendor, I do believe we have a chance here to add the vendor and then come back into the contract. But I didn't want to have that many go back and forth and give us all whiplash. So let's click the red link, Get Vendor. Let's look up Allegra and see if we can find. Now remember, my instinct is to come down here to click this button because that's logical, but I'm going to go up here and hit search. Now let's see if we can't find the one in Prescott. Look, I found it. And my thing is in the way. Prescott, select vendor, perfect. And then it should pop me back over. Great. So it added the prime contractor information. The buyer, we're going to move down now to organization contracts. Buyer project manager. This is Lindsay Bell. This is you. This is your agency. So go find and be careful because Central Yavapai Transit looks a lot like Central Yavapai Metro. So I'm going to make sure I choose Central Yavapai Transit Foundation. And poor Lindsay Bell, her browser struggles when she's trying to connect to meetings. So I really appreciate the fact that she was willing to let me use her information. And I think a benefit to her is that she'll have all this ready for her. So with pain comes a little bit of benefit. Lindsay Bell, I'll call her the contract administrator. Department, Central Yavapai Transit Foundation. So maybe make that note because I bet that's going to confuse some folks, or you'll forget that, oops, I spelled Yavapai wrong. You'll forget that little bit. That department should match you always. Let's see if I can go find Lindsay Bell's email address. And then Lindsay's phone number. I might not know Lindsay's phone number. Okay, so
I'll send it to you right now if you want. But
oh, good. That's
I
perfect.
got her card here. Give me a second.
Okay, let me just, while I wait, I'm just going to scroll down and see what else we've got, what it looks like. This is the part that'll scare you the most. And then I just want to see how much further we have. So, okay, not too much more to go. Let's see what we got for a phone number. If you get to this point and you don't know your own phone number, which is never going to be the case, but if you're for some reason entering somebody else's contract, I'm probably going to either wait for Pedro or I can enter a dummy phone number and edit it.
I just sent it to you there.
Fantastic. On the chat?
No, I guess I just sent it to your email.
Okay. Seven 778-0348. 778-0348. Thank you for that.
One more number. 8 at the end.
Maybe it doesn't let me have the.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'm just trying to see if I can get rid of this. Oh, good. I figured out how to get rid of the dialog box so that it's no longer in my way. Do stop me if I power through something too quickly. The reason I pulled up Lindsay's other contract is so that I can make sure that I do this part correctly. For the most part, these all stay zeroed. We are race neutral in Arizona, meaning we have a significant number of minority-owned businesses who are not disadvantaged. that could change in the future depending on this reporting. So that's why this is important. It helps keep that in track for the feds. I'm going to pull up Lindsay's contract and go down to that portion that has all this hairy information. Okay, so just what I thought. The FTA is going to be the 100% portion, of course, because our funds come from the FTA. Of course, many of you know that we do get a transfer from the FHWA, but that means that it becomes 100% FTA monies. Let's see though, I'm not going to enter it here. I'm going to enter it here. So if I did the value, $2,000 was what we projected. Now Lindsay and I will have to get together too, because that's a dummy amount right now. That's 100%. Let's see. Nope, it looks like I have to enter it here. Let's see what it does. A value for federal project number must be entered. Interesting.
Maybe if you take the zeros out.
Okay.
And then calculate, yep.
Okay, okay, cool. Thank you. All right, okay, so I dropped down that box. The funding source is based on value. I think that you should always choose value.
Gotcha.
Contract type. This will always be professional services. Procurement would be, I believe, when you're procuring capital equipment on your own, only one agency, and that's U of A, procures their own golf carts because we don't have a state contract. You'll, for the most part, always select professional services. In 5310, very rarely do we allow a construction award to go out because we don't have the expertise in-house to be able to oversee that. So professional services. We want this contract visible to contractors. Always leave that at yes. There's no reason to say no there. Prime permitted to self-request additional subcontractors. Yeah, and that's default as well. Please leave that the way that it is. There's no reason to click otherwise. And then let's see what we get when I choose federal funding source. Okay, so it's either FAA, FHWA, or FTA. So the FAA is aeronautics, federal highway associations, but will always, always, always be the FTA. We'll see if we get any errors when we actually submit this, but let's keep going. Compliance audit. This has to do with the 2 times a year, I believe, that they pull the data to report into the feds. So let's see, we're going to leave that one as default. Entered by staff, compliance officer. I'm just going to see if that is indicated. That might not, I see that it's not required. I'm going to see if that's on Lindsay's contract just to keep it the same. All right, so I think I can take that off since it's not required. And actually our awards are very likely not to need a compliance officer. That's usually the big corridor projects because they have a lot of requirements, including staff interviews by the feds and things. It's kind of crazy. So everything else is default. Just gonna make sure that's what Lindsay kept. Yes, yes, yes. Looks like everything was default. Good. All right. If you actually have a formal document, that's where this information will come in. I don't know. I do believe actually that Lindsay does have a formal contract with her first contract with Territorial Transit to do the directory for the user, the area users. So that she would need to enter her actual contracts there. I guess I could do a spell check just for fun. That's kind of cool. No errors. Let's do a review because that's our only option. Okay, so I want to know what that's referring to. A value for federal project number must be entered. Federal project number. Okay, this is where you go to your Exhibit A. I'm going to go find Lindsay's Exhibit A, and this should be quick, so I hope you don't mind watching me log in. And actually, I bet you I have it on Lindsay's contract. Here it is. So the federal project number is on your Exhibit A, but I'm worried about that one. I think that might be the actual grant agreement number. I'm going to pull up her Exhibit A just so that you all can see where you should be looking. Pedro, am I doing okay on time or have I blown us?
No, we have till 11:30.
Great. Okay.
But this is good. At least it'll give, you know, the viewers a place where they can do it, you know, for themselves, so that they can find out where to click.
Right. And because we're also finalizing your awards, the accountants are in now doing those GAE modifications. So don't be alarmed when you see that. I'm just going to go pull her. And this could be different than the way you see it because I'm the admin, but let's pull her Exhibit A. And this will be presented the same way that you all are used to seeing it.
Can you let us know the directory, I guess, of where you're looking at here in eGrants? Can you go to the top?
Sure. Let me go back.
So first you go to the 5310. Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. So yeah, when you're at your applications, you never have to enter in like I did Central Yavapai Transit because you only have access to your own agency. But I enter in as simply as I can do it. When you try to enter in all this information, it confuses the system. Do it simply. If it's you wouldn't even have this filled out. You could hit search just by having 5310 application 2019. In my case though, so I don't have to search for everybody, I just put in Central Yavapai Transit. If you click under organization, that takes you to your organization profile. That helps you fix addresses and change your members and deactivate people who have left. But this case, I'm going to go to the actual application under the word name. Your Exhibit A is always located in the View, Edit, and Complete Forms menu. I do believe that even if the accountants are in doing GAE modifications, that you can see your Exhibit A. So go ahead and click View Forms. This is the part that probably looks a little different to you than it does for me because of that I'm an admin here. But look for Exhibit A. It likely won't say admin with it, but it will say Exhibit A. Just click the hyperlink and it'll pull up a preview instead of the actual PDF. If I'm wrong because I've never been a user like you guys, please let me know. But this is the Exhibit A. What it looks like is Lindsay entered in the contract number. That's the grant agreement that you have with ADOT. What the system is asking for is the federal project number. If you're confused on which line you're using, you can reach out to me. You'll notice here that Lindsay has funding from the exact same funding source. So I can use that. I'm gonna just copy that G0F. That's kind of our naming convention for how we name our project numbers in our finance system.
The number before the /.
Yeah, the forward, it won't hurt you to do the whole thing. If Pedro or Todd, if you guys see that an agency has done that, that's no big deal. The AZ 2019-030 refers to that it came out of the 2019 grant from the feds, but the actual project number is the G to the T.
Okay.
And then I just pasted that in, and I think that will allow us to go back down, hit review. And now it looks exactly like Lindsay's. I just did a PDF print of Lindsay's contract here, Lindsay Bell's contract. So now it looks like that. And now I've got a contract. We want to save it. Don't forget, we just hit review and now it's the review. Don't go out of here before hitting save. And of course you can edit from here. You can also edit after the fact. I'm gonna hit save. And then I want to show you how you'll search for this contract once you've made it, or you can create it. Maybe you go back out and come back in because you've patted yourself on the back for creating it. Now you're going to go have a margarita. Now you're going to come back in and see if you can find it. The next part is doing payment reporting, actually reporting each payment. We did not include that in this training, especially because it's actually fairly straightforward if you use the using LPA system. I do want to hear a little bit from Judith, but first I want to show you how you'll search for your contract. So handy dandy left hand menu, hit search, let's go to contracts. This is where Lindsay entered in everything the way I asked her to. And she still couldn't pull up, it pulled up 0 of 0 records. And this is the troubleshooting that I started to do with the LPA system people to try to figure out what it was. And I think that I finally figured out that the departments are not matching. So make sure the department always is Central Yavapai Transit Foundation or your own agency. So I had search, I put the search parameters, put it in buyer project manager. That's the owner of the contract. I find that to be the easiest way to search for your contract. And then I'm going to hit search up here. So now we've got her first one that she created and the one that we just created together. When you're on this page, you can look over here and you can see audit list and audit summary. I don't know why, but you'll want to take this note as well. This system calls payments audits. I have no explanation. That has to be something to do with the big dogs doing corridor work. So I'm going to go to audit summary. And this is where you start to enter audits, which are payments. No subcontractors. Okay, that's what we wanted. Let's see if we can figure out how to. All right, I'm going to click on this little hyperlink that says payments just to see what that gets me. So Judith, if you don't mind, if you're able to unmute yourself, tell me a little bit about the challenges you've experienced with audits, with payments.
Okay, if you're in the middle of looking at a contract, one of the things you do is I can't remember what the tab was up here. You have to go into to look.
Let me go back. So if I go into the actual contract.
Right, and it's compliant audit summary.
Okay, let's see what we can find.
Okay, this looks a little different.
Yeah, this is different than what I expected as well. Let me show you that contract, her first contract she entered, because it gave me a little bit more play. I do want to point out that our goal for this week is simply to get your first contract entered. I'd like you to only focus on the biggest spending you do for this 1 or 2 year grant cycle, whatever you prefer to report as. I don't want you to rack your brains trying to come up with every contracting opportunity. Try to focus on maybe your biggest ones. So let's see what we can find, Judith. Let's look at the first one and see if that looks familiar to you. So I'm going to go into under contract number. I think you could probably enter into the contract using any one of these hyperlinks. Let's try that again. I'm going to go to compliance audit summary. Remember that audit means payment. Does this, see, this doesn't look the same way either, because there was a point at which I can enter a new audit. And
maybe what we need to look for is the audit list.
Audit list is here. That was next to compliance audit summary. So let's go to compliant audit list. That looks better.
Okay, this is what I was working from. I have about 20 or 25 payments showing here. And then at the top,
good for you.
I have about, it's June through September at the top. and they're marked, the status is marked pending. I don't see the status right here. And then over here, it's marked complete.
Okay.
So I can't go in, but I haven't entered anything for those months. So I don't know how to get back to where I can actually enter some payments for those months.
Okay. That is where I was also, this is kind of how far I had gotten in my own self-guided tour of the LPA portal. I'm trying to figure out what would be the best way forward here, because you're saying there's about 20 entries already. I know there's not any here that we could mess with. If it would be okay with you, Judith, I'd love to bring Sarah Allred in to see what this last piece, what we can do to like edit a payment. Can I set that up with you separately?
Oh, sure.
Is that something that you'd be willing to let us record? You might have to ask Kent, but you think about that too.
Yeah,
Not a big deal.
Yeah, let me ask Kent.
Okay. Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, it's okay, but I need to ask him.
Right. Yeah. Once it gets proprietary like that, sometimes it's a little bit harder to allow. So if that's the case, then I'll take copious notes for the team so that there's a nice cheat sheet training guide for Todd and Pedro to use for the region.
Okay.
So that was how to
Hey,
create
Lindsay?
this contract. Yeah.
Lindsay, this is Sherry Romley. The way I go in is from the view, and then I do contract audits, and it brings up all of my audits that I had out there that I'm paying on. Brings up every
That's good.
contract and the payment, and it's just real much easier because I just go down the line to put the payments in.
That is a good tip. Now see how it says show only records assigned to you. I have no records assigned to me. Let's see what happens if I uncheck it.
Yeah.
It might go crazy.
There you go.
Oh yeah, okay. So if I
Okay,
were,
and then you can click, and then you could click on each one, and it takes you to the payment page, and then you could put your payment in. I always go down there, at the bottom where it's red, not reported. I click on that, and then I go in and put the payment because it'll bring up the required payment. Well, bring up the sheet, and then you have to put in what your payment was and the date.
Okay, how did you get
If
into
you click
there?
on that,
Let me
if you click
show
on the
you.
not reported,
Well, the not reported is in a hyperlink. The submit is a hyperlink for me. And since this is Central YSIPTA, I'm afraid. You know what I mean?
well, I've been able to
look.
change them. So, yeah.
Not reported up here is hyperlinked. Let me just see what that shows us. Oh, well, look at that.
See, it just gives you that. And then you
That's
just
pretty
put in down there the amount and then the date and then the comments. You have to put something in the comments. And I normally put the check number that we paid or, the date. Like sometimes I'll put a couple payments in that one because it's for the month. And then I identify the check number and the date those payments were made.
Okay, so let me show you how I got here from, how do I get out of here? What did I save? Close. There's a close window. I thought it didn't have a close, but looks like it does. Okay, so let me show everybody how we just did that. I'm gonna go home. Sherry just told me to go to view, and she went to contract audits. I unchecked that box, but it would normally be checked to say show only records assigned to you. So if Lindsay Bell came in, hoping that the department situation gets fixed for her, she should only see audits for her own agency. I'm going to unclick it and pretend that I'm YSIPTA because I saw a lot of YSIPTA. Sherry told me to click the hyperlink at the date. And this gives me this page, which is the audit information.
Right.
And then to enter in the actual payment, see how it says payments. Now this is the part where, because it's called audits and because it's weird, this might be the page that trips you up. Sherry gave me the advice to go to this hyperlink that says not reported because there's not a payment that's been reported for YSIPTA here yet.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where Sherry says that she enters in her information, the date, and in comments sometimes check numbers and things like that, maybe vendor information, something like that. Or I guess you already have
And
vendor
then make
information.
sure you save it.
And then always save. If I hit save, it's going to say you didn't do anything though. So in that case, I'm going to close out. But yes, save.
Lindsay, I'll
And
try
then-
this and then let you
Okay.
know how it works for me.
Okay, sounds great. Like I said, I wanted most of today to focus on entering the contract. Thank you so much, Sherry, for the tips. Thank you, Judith, for allowing me to troubleshoot that a little bit. This is how we'll present this training. I hope it was helpful, and I hope I went slowly enough, but quickly enough to make it efficient. What questions do you have that I hope I can answer?
Are you going to be having more of these?
Say again, Judith?
Are you going to be having more of these trainings?
Yeah, as we need them, I'll do little workshops like this so that we can, so that I don't have to, spend all day on the phone with everybody around the state. This will at least be a tool that folks can use to try it on their own. I think it'd be very beneficial to do a workshop where we record how to actually submit a payment.
I think this is great, watching you talk, hearing you talk, and then seeing it on the screen. So we can tell what you're doing and hearing
Good.
from me.
I'm glad that's helpful.
Yeah.
Good. Okay,
Good.
great.
Hey, Lindsay, real quick, kind of maybe an overview question. So a lot of the 5310s, that they need to get a contract entered. A lot of agencies, I believe, haven't done this before. It seems like the preventive maintenance, especially with the supplemental funds that came around, most agencies are having preventive maintenance funds. Maybe that's a good area to kind of focus on in terms of finding contracts to enter. So agencies should think about the preventive maintenance funds that they received, who they're going to be working with. Say that they're going to be working at Bob's Automotive Shop down the street, and they're planning on doing all their oil changes with that agency over the next year. So the entire preventive maintenance grant award that they're receiving, that would essentially be the contract amount if they're planning on doing all their work with that agency. And so that is that kind of good starting point for our agencies to be thinking about their preventive maintenance awards, who they're working with, and try to kind of capture that as the singularly contract for them to get kind of initiated with this program and meet your guys' requirements.
I think that's a beautiful way to think about it. Use the preventive maintenance tends to be easier because we tend to always go to Bob's Automotive. Fuel is harder because we go where it's cheaper or wherever we happen to need gas if we're out in the field. So that's always been harder, and I know those are the questions that people are asking us. I would absolutely focus on the relationships that Todd had just described, the ones that it's pretty much always going to be at Bob's Automotive or the like. Those are going to be your easiest bets. Of course, there are going to be some agencies that simply just spend very little here and there. And is it really reportable? That's when I'd like you to come to me on a one-on-one basis so that we can talk that through. I don't want to give a blanket statement. I know that's kind of how it's been feeling so far, but for some of our smaller awards, you can see how this is too burdensome even to, maybe you won't want an award next year. That's what we want to avoid. So yeah, focus on the relationships that Todd just described.
One of the things I had a problem with was the DBE for disadvantaged. So when you talk about buying fuel from, a vendor, how do you know whether it's disadvantaged,
Right.
or by disadvantaged?
Right. And so that is the end goal of this entire portal. It's so that the feds there's probably a bunch of algorithms and formulas that they have to use. But once the state is told by the feds that we now have a DBE goal, that we're no longer race neutral, that's when the BECO office has to go out and really recruit DBEs to enter into our system. So the burden, the onus is mostly on our BECO office, the business relationship office, to develop those relationships with DBEs. We would have less of a obligation to go to DBEs, more of an obligation to simply just report who we're paying to. Once if Arizona ever got strict DBE goals, then ADOT would then probably have to take a lot of the oversight in trying to guide you to those DBEs. So that will very rarely ever come to you.
Okay.
But that's a great question because that's what most people are asking. And it's like, are you really going to go in and ask what somebody's ethnicity is to see if they're disability, you know? So that gets too hairy.